This is Cultish Tendencies 10 and is entitled Silence of the Lahm, Abdulilah Lahmani's Double Standards. Abdulillah speaks about Brixton Salafis and the supposed accommodation and promotion they have been doing over the years regarding particular individuals, students of knowledge, scholars, etc. And they refer to Sheikh Ali Hassan as one example. However, when we look at Abdulillah's cohorts and cult members, we see that in actuality, that accusation should be leveled at them, not Brixton and not at anybody else for that matter. And we only have to look at Abu Khadija, the head of the Abu Khadijites, statement many years ago, where he states that the transliteration being, as for me and as for Maktaba Salafiyah, Wallahi wa billahi wa tallahi, Abu Talha is a witness, Abu Sufyan is a witness, Abu Iyad is a witness, Bilal Hussein is a witness, that there is no one in the Western world who defended Sheikh Ali Hassan al-Halabi as much as Maktaba Salafiyah. Go to the websites, go to the bookstore, and you will see magazines defending Sheikh Ali Hassan al-Halabi. And you have just heard another lie that we say that Sheikh Ali Hassan Hafidahullah is miskeen. This is another kadhib from the kadhabun who have been lying and they continue to lie. We spent weeks, if not months, translating the works of Al-Albani and Ali Hassan and Sheikh Salim and Sheikh Khalid Al-Amri and the rest of the mashaykh with their tapes. And he continues, this particular lecture is on YouTube, and you can find that particular statement there. So while accusing Brixton of going to excesses in accommodating, promoting and defending Sheikh Ali Hassan, Abul Hassan and others, it's clear that they have gone to excess in this. And this is a problem with this particular cult. And it was mentioned in the last Cultish Tendencies 9 and previous before that they go to excessive praise and gulu of individuals that are with them. And when the reality of them becomes clear and those mashaykh leave them and start to warn against them, they go to the other extreme in denigrating and belittling these shuyukh and try to gather evidence and support from their small circle of scholars that they continue to go to. For example, when we look at excess in another occasion, we only have to look at the email, which was referred to again earlier on the 5th of October 2000, where Abu Khadija himself pens again, Al-Allama Ali Hassan al-Halabi responds to the Lajna. We wait for the Lajna to correct its mistake. That's clearly there in an email. Contrast this with Abu Khadija's later polarization and comments, as well as lies against Ali Hassan. And in one of his tweets, or from his website actually, the break from Al-Halabi in 2002. And he writes, quote, SP became aware of Al-Halabi's errors in affairs of manhaj shortly after 2001, in brackets, independent of the refutations of the Lajna, close brackets. Close quote at this point, because I want to address that. He mentions independent of the refutations of the Lajna. What refutations were they? That's the question that should be asked. Were they the same refutations that in 2001, he writes boldly, we wait for the Lajna to correct its mistakes? Where are those refutations? That'd be very interesting to see. Continuing with his writing on the website, quote, such as his defense and companionship of certain innovators whom the scholars had warned against, in brackets, such as his praise of Adnan Aror, Muhammad al-Hassan, etc., and his insinuations against senior Salafi scholars. So to join and connect the sentence in case those who are listening got a little confused, he says here, SP became aware of al-Halabi's errors in affairs of manhaj shortly after 2001, in brackets, independent of the refutations of the Lajna, close brackets, such as his defense and companionship of certain innovators whom the scholars had warned against, in brackets, such as his praise of Adnan Aror, Muhammad al-Hassan, etc., and his insinuations against senior Salafi scholars. Now, the question must be asked here, doesn't the Lajna comprise of senior scholars? So in that statement about insinuations against senior scholars, the Lajna comprise of senior scholars, but Abu Khadija only in 2000 was questioning and saying that they were waiting for the Lajna to correct its mistakes. That wasn't an insinuation. That was a direct disrespect from Abu Khadija and by extension Salafi publications regarding that. But it's clear at that time there was no problem with Ali Hassan. So their excessiveness was such that they would make such outrageous statements and requests and demands. We wait for the legend to correct its mistakes. But now Ali Hassan is making insinuations against senior Salafi scholars. But when Salafi publications do it, there's no problem, according to their cultish tendencies. Abu Khadija continued, stating the Salafis, who had understanding of the manhaj, realized Ali Hassan al-Halabi and those with him were deceiving the people and the Salafi youth in the West and raising large amounts of money in the process through seminars at Brixton Mosque, Luton CTI, and through QSS in the USA, for which they received criticism. Going back on that statement now, the Salafis who had understanding of the manhaj. This is quite a strange statement because Salafis who don't have understanding of the manhaj, they don't call them Salafis. They call them Qutubis, Ikhwanis, Sururis, Dajjal, everything else except Salafis who don't have an understanding of the manhaj. So that's a very strange statement, as though they're the ones who understood the manhaj. Okay, continuing. Another point that we need to look at. They talked about Sheikh Ali Hassan and those with him deceiving the people and the Salafi youth in the West. Now, a statement has to be made in this regard because I don't think it's been challenged. That's a clear lie, because in contrast, those who are deceiving the Salafis and the people in the West are none other than the Abu Khadeejite cult, and we will look at that very shortly. When looking at this deception of Sheikh Ali Hassan, what was it? Why did the Abu Khadijites defend Sheikh Ali Hassan so vehemently if he was deceiving? Were they fooled by him? Were they blind? Maybe their blind hezbiya towards anyone who they supported was such that they saw that. But in actuality, no, that wasn't the case, because Sheikh Ali Hassan did not come to the West with the Shuyukh to deceive the people, because they came and they had instruction from Sheikh Al-Albani himself. And those of us who were interacting and engaging with the Jordanians for many, many years were communicating with them and indirectly Sheikh Al-Albani. And there's evidence of that, right down to Brixton Masjid being purchased and the advice of Sheikh Al-Albani in that regard, particular institutes that were set up at that time by individuals, and Sheikh Al-Albani giving advice at that particular time. So that is an indirect insinuation, if you want to use the word insinuation, as Abu Khadija has done, that Sheikh Al-Albani had his students coming over to deceive students and Salafis and people in the West, which is a lie and an outright slander to write such a thing. Anyway, continuing. To raise large amounts of money in the process. This is an interesting point, because if you would like to know what sort of money they earned at Brixton, for sure, I'd be happy to disclose that. But they were not coming and earning large amounts of money. It was one occasion that I recall that the Shuyukh came over for a dawrah, which Abdulilah attended. And when Abdulilah attended and the test was given, he actually came back before the final results were given. And he remonstrated with Abdul Qadir when he saw that there was a mark that he had made a mistake on. And he was saying it wasn't a mistake and it's a half mistake and it should be overlooked. And he was really browbeating Abdul Qadir Bashk from Luton, who was one of the organizers of the conference as well, to increase his mark, which he subsequently did. This is the same Abdulillah who, when the conference, the Dawrah, had finished and we were standing outside of the centre next door, he was standing there almost amazed, and he kept saying 3 times, "This is ilm, this is ilm, this is ilm." This is the same Abdulilah Lahmani, and we're referring, of course, to the point of making loads of money. This was one of the key times that the Shuyukh were paid a fee for what they were doing. Other than that, we, like many other centres, communities, masajid, covered their expenses of travelling over for the conferences and their accommodation. The cult, on the other hand, they are the ones who continue to make money. We see that businesses are being set up. We see that they've tried to monopolize Salafiyah in a way to generate business and finance. And they did this from the very early start, where they started cloning individuals' tapes and giving them other names and selling them in their bookshops. Zain al Abidine was one of the individuals who used to be with them, who'd come to Brixton, record the Brixton tapes or buy the Brixton cassettes, take them back up, repackage them, give them a different name, sell them for a different price. So they are the ones who are intent on making money and making the cult a business enterprise, as we can see from their Hajjanit Umras, their books and everything else, the agreements they've got with one sheikh in America. We can go on. Anyway, as I've said, repeating, it's the cult that continues to deceive the people. The recent CCTV footage of Naveed and Abu Sufyan and others sitting in an estate agents in Reading talking about the revelation that Naveed's brother and brother Khalid had stolen and misappropriated some finances and what they were going to do about that. And you see Naveed explaining this and Abu Sufyan picking through his beard, listening intently. So this is where deception was there. The CCTV footage was released, it's on YouTube, and that was clearly seen. Also, the allegation against Hassan Somali in America, misappropriating funds from the sale of a masjid or a building, and that money not being reinvested into the community. It was donated as sadaqah jariyah, but it was not reinvested back into the community. And lo and behold, and it's not for me to join the dots, evidence has to be established. Lo and behold, we hear of Hassan Somali investing in real estate for himself. Anyway, concluding on this particular section, because there's a lot to get through at this particular stage, suffice it to read regarding the excesses that individuals go to, entities go to, this cult goes to. It was related from Ubayd al-Kindi, who heard from Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiallahu anhu, that he said to Ibn al-Aqwa, love the one you love moderately, somewhat, as perhaps he will be your enemy one day, and hate the one you hate moderately, somewhat, as perhaps he will be your beloved one day. We know there's a hadith in similar line to this. There are other evidences here, but suffice it to go through that particular narration there to highlight the excesses and give a warning to the excesses of the cult in how they hold people up excessively and then how they try to denigrate them excessively. Now we return the focus onto Abdulilah. And before going into some current matters, it's necessary to give a historical perspective. In 1997, while Abdulilah was living in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, he was studying in evenings with an individual called Yahya Silmi. When I visited Jeddah after performing Umrah that particular year, I met with him, and I remember him producing a book and telling me it was from Sheikh Uthaymeen. And he opened the introduction and he exclaimed excitedly to me, after reading something from it, that neither Sheikh Uthaymeen or Sheikh Ibn Baz were Salafi, and rather they were Hanbali. Now, to date, and I've remonstrated with him on at least 2 occasions when we spoke years ago, I protested and told him to recant, and he never recanted. He never recanted from this slanderous statement. Even when we were meeting in Sheikh Rabi's home many years ago, there was an agreement that I would meet him there with Abdurazak As-Sanani, who he was with at the time, and we would sit and bring our affairs to Sheikh Rabi'. And I remember it was after Jummah, I got there before them with colleagues of mine, and then they came. And we sat in the corner while Sheikh Rabi was talking with some individuals. And I told him, I'm going to raise this issue to Sheikh Rabi' that you said this. And he became very concerned, and he said he was foolish at that time, but that wasn't a recantation. And to date, he hasn't done that. Why am I revisiting that particular moment and his refusal or his neglect of recanting this slanderous statement against 2 mountains of the Sunnah? It's because of his duplicity. When he tries so hard and makes efforts to stay on the winning team, that he forgets some of the outrageous statements and positions and slanders that he's made before. And let's bring it more up to speed. Like, for example, on the 7th of August 2016, Lahmani tweeted the following to Abu Sumaya, 99. Sheikh, we don't know which Sheikh, Sheikh advised that when Sheikh Khalid ad-Dufairi comes to Birmingham, inshallah, then one should unite with their Salafi brothers, not separate conference. That's the words, not separate. So not separate conferences or not a separate conference. He continued, Sheikh said, and it's maybe maybe it was 3 or 4 at the time, 4 at the time would say, of their sheikhs. The sheikh said, those that do separate conferences, while Sheikh Khalid Dufairi is present, only seek disunity. So that can be read another way. Those that do separate conferences, while Sheikh Khalid Dufairi is present, only seek disunity. Okay, this may be seen as a valid point. This Sheikh Al-Dufairi, Khalid Al-Dufairi, is coming to Birmingham. There should be one conference. The Salafis should unite. Okay, by the same token, now in 2018, Sheikh Salih Suhaimi is visiting the UK, Manchester and elsewhere. So why then is Abdulilah delivering a 5-day conference, or sorry, 5-day study workshop from the 29th of March to the 2nd of April in Manchester, the Salafi Centre in Manchester? Let's go back to 2016. Abdulilah has tweeted, Sheikh Khalid Dufairi comes to Birmingham, everyone should unite, there should be one conference with the Salafi brothers. The Sheikh said that those who separate, while Sheikh Khalid is present, only seek disunity. Okay, now put the shoe on the other foot. The ball is in the court of Dr. Abdulilah Lahmani and his colleagues. Why then are you doing a 5-day conference, 5-day workshop, if you like? Isn't that calling to disunity? Isn't Sheikh Saleh far more senior than Sheikh Khalid Dufairi? Is it because Sheikh Saleh speaks out against your cult, like so many have, and continue to do so? Are you, Dr. Lahmani, at a level even close to that of Sheikh Saleh? Where is your humility? Where is your shame or your embarrassment? So you're not shamed in that particular area to do this 5-day workshop. And this happens, listeners, this happens on so many occasions. You see shuyukh coming from Saudi and elsewhere going to Birmingham. Okay, they're going to Green Lane. But then you see in Wright Street a wrong happening, in that there are no shuyukh going there, and you have the usual suspects, the Abu Khadeejite clan members. On the podium, Dr. Abdulilah, the last name at the bottom, even though he's got his PhD, delivering their talks. How is that? Is that unity? All of the shuyukh going to Green Lane, for example, are bona fide scholars on the whole. And there's not one single scholar or student of knowledge among them, bona fide student of knowledge. Abu Hakim didn't graduate. Now, you have no shame, and they have no shame in these instances. But there is an element of shame that Dr. Abdulilah does have when it comes to his personal affairs in studying. And we won't bring personal affairs, I'm talking about studying at this particular instance. So, for example, he performed tadlis when he admitted to mention one of the supervisors in his studies. He only thanked one of them, Professor Paul Starkey, and he omitted Professor Daniel Newman. Professor Daniel Newman, why? Let us examine why he omitted to mention Professor Daniel Newman. And then we will look at the double standards that are there. Who is Professor Daniel Newman? What has he written? He is the author and translator of some works of erotica material, and none other than the Rafidi heretic arch-enemy of Ahl Sunnah in Baghdad, Nasser at-Tusi. So before we go into the details here, let's look at what is said concerning the characteristics of people who behave in this way. That there's a double standard, there's a duplicity, that they will say, if you are with such and such, you are astray. If you study under such and such and do not correct them or move away from them, you are astray. But with his PhD, he has an individual who is a translator of erotica from the Rafid Shia, and also a translator of Nasser at-Tusi's books, his works. Sheikh Falah al-Ismail stated, those who have this shiddah, you see them with the non-Muslims, the fusaq and the grave worshippers, so soft and meek. By Allah, if he goes to a sinner, rather to the kuffar, ahlul bidah and grave worshippers, mashallah, what is this softness, kindness and compassion here? So there's a softness and a sort of camaraderie that he had with his professor. Let's look and let's start looking at this professor and his works. Lahmani accuses SalafiManhaj.com of using vile language. That's what he accuses them of. But yet when we look at the translation from Professor Newman's works, page 50 of his book entitled The Sultan's Sex Potions. That's the title of this book. The Sultan's Sex Potions, Arab Aphrodisiacs in the Middle Ages. Nasruddin at-Tusi. Okay. Translated and introduced by Daniel L. Newman, his professor. So, what is in this book? Quote, the second is a Catalan work entitled Speculum al-Foderi. In English translation, a mirror for the Effers. I'm not going to swear and use the word. Also we see, and it's going to get a little explicit here to highlight the nature of Abdulilah's professor and why he did Tadlis and didn't mention his name. But yet he goes on to do rudud, refutation, lie, find angles and avenues to slander communities and individuals. But he hides this reality about who he studied under. Page 122 of At-Tusi's book that was translated. As I said, it's going to get a little sensitive here. Descriptions of medicines that when inserted by a woman prevent pregnancy for as long as she uses them and make her vagina as tight and hot as a young girl's. Close quote. This is not me making this up. This is translating, and it's being translated explicitly so that I'm not sugarcoating it. This is the Deen, and these things need to be made clear. Page 44 of the same book, going back earlier in the book, the same notion underlay views of the lesbian sexual experience, which, in addition to entailing friction, as the terms for it indicate, sihak, musahaka, which means to grind, was thought to be penetrative by the means of dildos, close quote. Now, again, why is this being read? Why are these excerpts being read? Because an individual, a professor that translates the work of Rafidi heretics like At-Tusi, and then can supervise an individual who's holding himself up to be one of the leading lights of the Abu Khadeejite cult in the West. How come? Where is the shame in this? Where is the silence from Dr. Lahmani knowing that he studied under such an individual? How is it such that the double standards can be in this particular instance with Dr. Lahmani? We haven't seen him refute or disassociate from Professor Newman. We didn't see him choose an alternative supervisor, as those who have done PhDs know that you can do. There should be a lesson in this for him and the cult. And drawing to a conclusion now, the cult should look at something and their members, that they have got to avoid elevating their cult leaders above their station and no longer being fooled by them. I doubt that's going to be the case. You know, you have these die-hard keyboard warriors and warriors looking around to see who's refuting them and coming back with their venomous statements. If it's a tweet, if it's a comment on YouTube, very immature. They've got nothing else to do. But the advice to them is you've got to stop elevating these cult leaders above the station that they have. I said in CT9 that you would see soon that these individuals, these cult leaders, will be referred to instead of the shuyukh. And while that hasn't happened in totality yet, we have got individuals calling them sheikhs, shuyukh. So looking at a tweet here, 10:24 p.m. on the 18th of March, you have an Abdulaziz Athari responding to an individual saying, my brother, I advise you to visit the ulama, Sheikh Rabi', Sheikh Ubaid, Sheikh Abdullah al-Bukhari, and ask them to clarify the issue to you. If you aren't able to visit the mashayikh near to you, Sheikh Abu Khadija, Sheikh Abu Hakim, Sheikh Abu Iyad, get clarification. So if you aren't able, I think it means if you aren't able to visit the real mashayikh in Medina, then visit those near to you, Sheikh Abu Khadija, Sheikh Abu Hakim, Sheikh Abu Iyad, to get clarification. Then you see in another tweet the same individual who's talking about within Sheikh Rabi's house. This is on March the 20th. Within Sheikh Rabi's house, they tried to convince the Sheikh against the Salafi brothers at Salafi pubs. Is that not evidence? That is mentioned in this article and also an earlier article of Sheikh Abu Iyad. So Sheikh Abu Iyad is mentioned there. The milkshake. You've got Sheikh Abu Hakim mentioned again. Sheikh Abu Khadija mentioned again. Now, in reality, if you want to refer to them as sheikhs, which should not be done, possibly Abu Khadija can be called the herbal sheikh because of his business in alternative medicines, complementary medicines. Abu Iyad, we know, is the milk sheikh. That's been established because of his studies in unpasteurized milk. Abu Hakim, on the other hand, can be called another milkshake because of his business. But I think we can't have two milkshakes. So perhaps the name Sheikh Muchibi would be a name that you can terminalize or give as a terminology for Abu Hakim. And then Dr. Lahmani, we wouldn't call him a sheikh as such in this particular instance, but based on the evidence and based on his professor, he could possibly be called the student of erotica. However, they are certainly not sheikhs in the scholastic sense of the word, and that needs to desist at this particular point. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.